I have with me here today a Hansshow NACS to CCS1 extension cable. These NACS to CCS1 extension cables are meant for owners that have electric vehicles with a CCS1 charging port. And now the vehicle has access to Tesla's supercharger. Tesla's recently opened up their supercharger network to electric vehicles made by other companies. And the problem that a lot of people are finding out is that because of the charge port location on their electric vehicle, they cannot pull into a stall and use the charger that's meant for that stall. They have to block two spaces because of the charge port location. And because of that issue, many people are asking for an extension cable so that they don't need to take up two stalls when they're at a Tesla supercharger. Sometimes there aren't two stalls next to each other available, and you have to sit there and wait until there's two spots available. Also, when people are trailering, it becomes very difficult to pull into the Tesla supercharger and get your charge port close enough. It's hard enough to do that when you don't have a trailer, but if you have a trailer, it makes it really difficult. And having a little bit of an extension cable will definitely help make plugging into the supercharger easier. Now, this unit's been available for about 6 months now. And when it first became available, I reviewed it here on State of Charge, and I found what I consider a number of safety issues. And when the review was done, I basically said, I do not recommend purchasing this. It's the first one on the market. I don't believe it's safe. And I told my followers I would not buy it. And it wasn't cheap. It was $599. When that review was done, I think it was the next day, I got emails from Hansshow basically saying, look, we saw your review. While we're not thrilled with it, we recognize that perhaps this first generation product has some deficiencies. We want to improve upon it. If we make a second generation product and send it to you, will you review it and give us some feedback? So that's what we're going to do here today. Hansshow has a second gen product. I actually have a prototype here in the State of Charge garage. We're going to take a look at it. I'm going to review it. I'm going to use it to charge my Rivian R1S, and we'll see if Hansshow made some significant improvements. They have to be significant improvements because the first generation, in my opinion, fell very short of being what I would consider a safe device to use. With that said, let's get into it. Okay, so I have both of the extension cables here on the table. This is the prototype here on the outer side, the version 2. This is the original Hansshow extension cable. And the first thing that you could obviously see is that this cable is longer. The original version 1 was 5 feet long. And I had some concerns on whether or not that would be long enough for some of the electric vehicles with big long hoods and had the charge port on the left driver's side fender, kind of right in front of the driver's side door, like say a Lucid Air that has a big long hood, some of the Cadillacs. I'm not sure that 5 feet was enough. I had mentioned that I think it needed to be a little bit longer. This extension cable, the version 2, has an 8-foot cable. And that's from tip to tip, not just the cable. This was 5 feet, this was 8 feet. So it's significantly longer. And I think that this would allow any electric vehicle to park in one stall and use the charger that is dedicated for that stall. So first thing, improved. Okay. Next, and probably the biggest issue that I had with the first generation product was on both ends of the extension cable, there's a button that allows that end to disconnect, a release button. And you can see it on this side here. The release tab on this side actually was a switch. And as soon as you pressed it, charging would stop. Unfortunately, this button here on this side is not a switch. It's just a dumb button. So what that means is while you were charging, if you press this button and pulled the NACS connector out of this here, you'd be unplugging hot. you could have a serious arc flash. That was the biggest problem that I had with this extension cable. I thought it was a very serious safety risk. And that has been improved on the second generation. It now has an active switch here that as soon as you press this, will stop charging before you can release the connector from the extension cable. Okay, so problem 2 solved. This cable also on the first gen was only rated for 250 amps. 1,000 volts, 250 amps. Now, a lot of electric vehicles today will pull 500 amps. Maybe not for a long period of time, maybe for 10 minutes or so, but that's enough to really heat up a 250 amp rated cable. And I found problems with this when I was charging my Rivian R1S on it on a Tesla supercharger. The Rivian kept reporting that the charge port was overheating and shutting off. And that's never happened to me just using a NACS adapter at a Tesla supercharger. So I'm sure it had something to do with this extension cable. Okay, the new version 2 is 1,000 volts, but now it's rated for 350 amps instead of 250 amps. And Hansshow told me that they've done extensive testing at pulling 500 amps for extended periods of time, and that it hasn't reached the thermal limits, which is 185 degrees at each end. The first gen cable also had the safety switches, thermal switches, where if it hit 185 degrees Fahrenheit, charging would shut off. This still has those temperature sensors on both ends, but Hanshow's telling me that they've tested it extensively now, and it won't shut off because the cable doesn't overheat, the connectors don't overheat. We'll test it out. I will go and charge up my Rivian again, and we'll see if we have the same issues that we experienced the last time. Now, some people might say, well, it's still only rated for 350 amps. And you mentioned that these cars pull 500 amps. Well, the 350 amps is a consistent rating. Like it can do that forever and not derate. Some of the NACS adapters themselves aren't rated for 500 amps, even though they will allow 500 amps to pass through them for extended period of time without hitting any thermal limits. And that's because there's always an allowable like overboost period, depending on how long that is. And I suspect that with a 350 amp UL rated cable, this cable is UL certified for 350 amps. I suspect that the cable won't have any issues allowing 500 amps to pass through it for a short period of time, as long as your electric vehicle will pull 500 amps. For instance, my Lightning will do it for 6 or 7 minutes. My Chevy Equinox will do it maybe a little bit longer, about 8 minutes or something like that. The Rivian, similar time too, before it starts to naturally derate and slow the charging rate up. So, but we'll test it with the Rivian R1S. And that led to the other problem that I had when I did charge my Lightning with this cable, and it didn't shut off charging. It didn't have the same problems that I experienced with my Rivian. I was able to do a 10 to 80% charging session. I was taking temperature of the cable and the connectors, and the temperature rose above 140 degrees Fahrenheit, surface temperature, which is the limit for a UL 2252 standard on electric vehicle charging adapters. For any of the surfaces need to remain under 140 degrees Fahrenheit. When I tested, which was in the summer with sun beating down on the cable, it did exceed 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I'm testing this new cable in the winter. It's December and it's cold out. So that's probably going to help the cable remain cool. So even after I do this, I'm maybe not completely convinced that it's not going to have a problem in warm weather, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's nice and cool here now in December. I mean, today it's only like 20 degrees. Tomorrow's when I'm actually going to do the test. It's supposed to warm up. I think it's going to be in the 50s. So that'll give us a little bit more temperature. But still, I suspect I won't have a thermal problem. The fact that this cable is better, and the fact that Hansshow actually recognized that there was this issue and have specifically designed it now so that it can allow 500 amps to pass through it without having any problems. Okay, so they addressed my major issues. Now, this whole unit here is not UL certified, but Hansshow has told me that all of the components themselves are UL certified. But that's really not how you judge whether a device is UL certified. You can have this connector could be UL certified, this connector could be UL certified, the cable could be UL certified. But as soon as you put all three together in one device, it's not UL certified anymore or safety certified. You don't just, it doesn't have to be UL, it could be ETL or CSA. If all the components are certified independently, once you put them together, the unit itself is not certified. So this unit is not safety certified. I don't know if Hansshow is going to go forward with getting it safety certified. I know they just sent me the information saying, look, the components are safety certified. It meets, all of the components meet UL standards. With that said, let's take this thing out, plug in my Rivian. I'm going to charge from 10 to 80%. Hopefully it works. I'll also take the temperature during the charging session. As I mentioned, it's cooler, so that's going to help it remain cool. And then we'll talk about the results once the charging session's over. State of Charge is powered by Qmerit, North America's premier installer of electric vehicle charging equipment. After I've helped you decide which charger to buy, follow the link in the description of my videos and have Qmerit install it. And if you do follow that link, Qmerit will waive the $150 installation deposit. But this is an exclusive offer for State of Charge followers. So in order to get that offer, you must follow the link in the description of my videos. All right, so slight change of plans. I'm actually here with my Ford F-150 Lightning right now. My Rivian R1S is parked behind me. So what I'm going to do is back-to-back charging sessions. I'm going to charge the Lightning first. I'm here at a Tesla V3 Plus supercharger station. These are the stations that have slightly higher power, but also longer cables. I normally wouldn't need an extension cable at a Tesla V3 Plus, but we're not here to test the length of the cables. I know this big, long 8-foot cable is going to be long enough to reach even at a regular V3 site. This is just to test to see how this new cable works. So first, let me plug it in. And we're going to test the new locking mechanism first. Okay, so it's attached now. First up, I'm going to see if it pulls loose just by pulling it. It doesn't. Okay, so that's good. Secondly, now I'm going to plug it in and start a charging session, and I want to depress this switch, this new switch they just added, to make sure that charging stops immediately upon pressing in that switch. Okay. And evidently, doesn't look like I have plug-in charge activated on my Lightning. Sometimes I turn it off. My mistake. So let me turn on this session. I'm at 1D. I'm pressing start charging now. So the vehicle should start charging. And yes, it is. So now what I'm going to do is press this tab. I want to make sure it shuts off charging. Yep. As soon as I press this button in, charging stopped immediately. All right, so next up, I'm going to start a new charging session. This time, let the Lightning charge from a very low state of charge. I think I'm at like 8 or 9%, up to about 70%. And then I'm going to unplug it and immediately plug in my Rivian R1S. That's also at a very low state of charge, and then charge that up to a high state of charge. I want to stress the cable with 2 continuous charging sessions. Now, it's only about 41 degrees right now. If this was in the middle of the summer, it would be even a better test because the ambient temperature is going to help keep the cable cool. But for now, this is the best I can do. This is the temperature we have here. So we'll try back-to-back charging sessions. All right, let me get the Lightning charged up. Then I'll bring the Rivian in and we'll do a test. I'll also be testing the temperature of the cable and the connector during these charging sessions. I have my thermal thermometer. All right, so I just charged the Lightning up from, I think it was at 8% state of charge to I'm at 76% state of charge now. The charging session was perfect. Pretty much exactly what I would expect charging at a Tesla supercharger. I believe it held the full 500 amps that the Lightning is going to pull for the period that it normally was, about 7 or 8 minutes. So we charged up really well. Now what I'm going to do is unplug the Lightning, pulling in the Rivian, and I'm going to do back-to-back charging sessions. If you remember, the version 1 of the Hansshow cable wouldn't charge my Rivian. For whatever reason, it just wouldn't charge it. So hopefully with this V2, now it will work. Now remember, I am beta testing this. This is a prototype, so they specifically gave it to me. One of the reasons was to test it on my Rivian. So let's see how this works. So I'm going to unplug now. Pete's going to pull the Rivian in, and we're going to do back-to-back sessions. As far as the cable temperature goes, the hottest I saw was 62 degrees Fahrenheit. Now again, it's down to 38 degrees, but the cable and the connector didn't get warm at all. I'm sure the ambient temperature helped it out, but I mean, it was not a problem at all. When I tested the V1 in the summer, it got over 140 degrees, but we didn't even hit 65 degrees Fahrenheit on any part of the cable right now. So there's no problem charging in cold weather. We'll test it again once it gets warm. So let me unplug it now. Lay this over here for now, and then we're going to do a quick swap. All right, so now we've got the Rivian R1S here. I'm going to quickly plug it in before it gets to cool off, even though it's not even warm. Like I said, it's only about 60 degrees. Let's start a back-to-back charging session. Okay. Hopefully it works, because the V1 didn't work. Let's see, let me check it out. Waiting for a green light here. All right, so it is charging. Let's see how long it charges and how long it charges at a high rate. I'm hoping that it pulls the full amount for, you know, a good 10 or 15 minutes before it starts ramping down. Okay, back in the garage now, and I didn't continue filming at the supercharger site because it started to get windy and it was cold and it just wasn't a good environment for filming. But I charged the Rivian up to 70% and the cable did fine. There were no anomalies. It pretty much accepted the full amount of power, what I would expect it to, at a Tesla supercharger, as did the Lightning. So first impressions, and again, this isn't first impression. I'm going to be beta testing this for a few months now. Actually, a few weeks. I think they plan on releasing it, if all goes well, mid-February. But as far as I know, I'm the only person that has one of these now beta testing for the company. As I said, they reached out to me and said, look, we're going to make these improvements. Would you please use it on your various electric vehicles and tell us if you have any problem? And I agreed to do that, and that's why we're here. As far as my impressions, much better than Gen 1. I mean, Gen 1 was a bit of a disaster. As I mentioned in my first video, I said I would not recommend people buying. I mean, the number one issue, which was a serious issue, was that this release button here wasn't a switch. It was just that, a release button. Now it's an electronic switch. So as soon as you press it, charging stops, as will happen on the CCS1 side, but that functioned properly on Gen 1. Also, I had overheating problems with the cable. It exceeded 140 degrees surface temperature. The fact that that cable was only rated for 250 amps, and many electric vehicles pull 500 amps for a while. As I mentioned, you could always pull, I won't say always, but in many instances, you could pull more than the rated amperage of an adapter or a cable for a short period of time. Those ratings are for continued use. And as with the NACS to CCS1 adapters, if you're pulling a little bit more current for 5 or 10 minutes, it typically isn't a problem. And if they're designed properly, they have thermal sensors that will derate or shut the charging off if it does become a problem and you exceed the heat rating that the device is engineered for. So this has 185 Fahrenheit limits, sensors on both ends. It will shut off charging. Nothing gets derated. It just stops charging if it hits that peak. I didn't experience anything like that. As a matter of fact, I kept going outside and measuring the temperature of the connectors and the cables. It never got higher than like 62 degrees. Yes, it was cold out, and yes, that absolutely helped. And as you can see towards the end of the video, it was at night. We didn't have direct sunlight. When I tested version 1, it was in the middle of the summer. I had direct sunlight baking down on us, and that certainly helped the cable exceed what I believe is a safe limit. If this was not tested in the middle of summer, would it have? Perhaps. I don't know. There's no way I could really test it now unless I hopped on a plane with this thing and flew down to Florida somewhere, which maybe I will at some point if I have the time. But the fact that this cable's rated now for 350 amps, and from what Hansshow told me, it's a UL rated cable to handle 350 amps. That makes me believe that it can handle a boost period of 500 amps for 5 or 10 minutes without having a problem. And I mentioned it didn't even feel like it got warm. I mean, even though it was cold outside, if this cable was really being stressed, it would start to get warm. It might not hit 140 degrees, but it would certainly get hotter than 60 degrees. So I think the improvements they made between the better cable, the switch, also the fact that now it's going to be offered in an 8-foot length. 5 foot, I think, was really pushing. I think the cables really need to be somewhere around 6 to 7 feet in order to be able to service pretty much any electric vehicle and have the electric vehicle use the stall at the supercharger that it was intended to use. Trailering with trucks and so forth, you definitely need maybe even longer than that. I don't even know if 8 feet will be enough, but it probably will be in many instances. So they're going to offer this in a 5-foot length and an 8-foot length. At least that's the plan now. I don't have any pricing. I know the 5-foot Gen 1 was $599, so it's not cheap. And I think a lot of people have the opinion of, look, I'm not going to spend $600 just so I don't inconvenience another driver. I'm going to take up 2 stalls at a Tesla supercharger. And I understand if that's how you feel, that's fine. But understand, this is also going to inconvenience you, because if you go to a Tesla supercharger that has high utilization and you can't get 2 spots open next to each other, as cars are pulling in and out, you can't get 2 stalls that are open. That's happened to me with my F-150 Lightning, where the site was never full, but there were never 2 stalls open next to each other, which is what I needed to be able to pull in. I just sat there for a while cars pulled in and out, waiting for my opportunity to be able to pull in. And it wasn't one of those sites where there's an extra parking spot all the way to the right, where it's not a supercharger store where you could pull in there and charge. That's the ideal situation. If there's a supercharger location where there's a stall all the way to the end that's not a supercharger location, you could park in that and plug in your vehicle and then only take up 1 stall. But there's not a lot of those sites out there. Most of the sites, you really need to take up 2 stalls if you don't have the charge port located, as Tesla does, in the left rear or in the front right of your electric vehicle. All right, well, that's pretty much all I have it on here today. I'm going to follow up with some more content on this cable, but I just wanted to give you guys an update. I know a lot of people, I get a lot of requests for supercharger extension cables. A to Z is making one. They promised to have it out by the end of this year. We're 5 days before the end of the year, or 6 days, whatever it is, before the end of the year. It's not out yet. But they are going through safety certification. They said they weren't going to release the cable until it was safety certified, and I think that's the holdup with A to Z's product. As far as Hanshow's product, I don't know if they are going to actually take the whole thing as a completed device and put it through CSA or UL or ETL safety certification. I don't have an answer on that. They just responded that all of the components are safety certified, and they sent me a bunch of certificates saying that the components they're going to be using are safety certified. So I don't know if they're going to actually go through formal safety certification for the whole unit, but their plan is it will be available mid-February, and I'll probably have an update video on it between now and then. And I certainly will if I have any problems with it. If there's any issues that I encounter, I'll do a video. But if everything's working fine and I'm going to use it on my Equinox, my Rivian, some more, my Lightning, whatever vehicles I get on loan and so forth, if I have no issues, it's perhaps maybe I won't do an update video, or maybe I'll do it right when they launch the product. But for now, big improvement. I still want to get the final version because this is a prototype. This end is like 3D printed. This isn't the actual end that's going to be on the unit, but they said it's representative of what it's going to be. And I'd like to get a hold of that final product that customers purchase and do a review right probably around the launch time for this. But stay tuned for updates on the NACS extension cables. And listen, happy holidays to all the State of Charge followers out there. This video is probably going to get posted right around Christmas because we're just a couple days before that now. And as always, thanks for watching. If this is your first time here at State of Charge, please hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.